Writing Out Loud, a program designed to explore in-depth interviews with writers to hear that words have voices.
Hello, everyone. I'm Teresa Miller, and welcome to Writing Out Loud. You'll never believe who's here today. The Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, Beth Henley. Beth, welcome back to Oklahoma.
Thank you.
We just love having you here. I've got to tell you, you're 28 years old when you get the Pulitzer Prize. What do you do when you're 28 and you get this call or letter or however you found out? What do you do when you get news like that?
Well, I called my mom.
Yeah.
And then I went out with my boyfriend and some friends and celebrated at a restaurant. And then we got some really cheap champagne and came back up to my house, and more people came and ordered pizza and pretended like we knew what we were doing.
Did you have any idea that something like that was in the works for you?
No, I really didn't.
And just suddenly, how did you find out? Did you get a call?
Well, I got a call from an agent, and then he got kind of cut off. He said, I'll call you back. And then I got a call from the newspaper.
So then you know this is for
and
real.
I felt bad, though, because the agent wanted to tell me the news, so then I had to pretend like I hadn't heard it when he called.
Well, that's where your acting talent comes
My
in.
infamous acting talent.
You know, I've been telling you throughout your visit here how much I love Crimes of the Heart. And you've got these three Southern sisters who are all rallying together to help one who's under siege at the time. You have sisters. Is there any autobiographical carryover?
Well, I think I have three sisters, and I just think how sisters relate. We had no brothers, and there's a kind of intimacy but competitiveness, and everyone is fighting for their identity. But none of my sisters shot their husbands, and I don't know.
Any of them played the saxophone?
No, I love the saxophone. My boyfriend had a saxophone, and I pretended to play it like Babe.
Babe is such a great character. All of the women are such strong leads in that play. As an actress, which one of those roles would have appealed most to you to play?
Oh, wow, none. I'm just too scared of acting.
Are you scared? Do you get stage fright?
I'm a terrible actress. It goes without saying.
But you love the theater. Your mom was involved in the community theater, wasn't she? You think being around theater from an early age has helped you be a better playwright?
I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. You know, one of the interesting things about this play, Crimes of the Heart, there's the crime you alluded to where somebody shoots a husband. But the crimes is in the plural here. Crimes, not crime of the heart. What are some of the other crimes that are at work in this play?
Well, I think Meg, the middle sister, has gone off to Los Angeles, and she has kind of gone crazy because she did a kind of cruel thing to her boyfriend and left him in Biloxi with a broken leg after a hurricane that she taunted him into staying for. And the older sister has kind of like given up her life to stay with her grandfather and just sublimated all of her needs. And the mother committed suicide.
With a cat.
With a cat, just to make it interesting. And the father has left them. So and the grandfather has been too controlling. So there are many crimes that people have done mostly because of love.
Yeah, isn't that a great irony? And really, when you get right down to it, the shooting you alluded to is probably the least serious of the crimes. I mean, because there can be healing there, and with some of these others, we're not sure how much healing can take place. One of the great ironies of your winning the Pulitzer, I think that was the first time in history that someone had gotten a Pulitzer for a play that had not yet opened on Broadway.
I know. It was. I think it was the first time they changed the rules. The first year they decided that plays could be nominated for the Pulitzer that were off-Broadway as well as on Broadway.
So that was just incredible. And what was it like for you when it finally did open on Broadway?
Well, I had 50 relatives that came.
Are you 50?
Yes.
50 relatives there on opening night?
Yes, and I didn't realize that opening night is sold out, and so you have to get the tickets through the producers. You can't just go buy them. And all of my relatives, or anybody that ever knew me, I said I could get in. And finally I realized I had like 100, and I got my little sister Cece drunk on vodka, and I said, I'll pay you $500 if you call all these people and tell them they can't come. So she just got drunk. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to come.
With total Southern graciousness, I'm sure. As a playwright, you're sitting out in the audience, or are you backstage when the play is debuting?
In this case, I was at a bar across the street.
Okay, so you couldn't stand to be there. But as a playwright, are you kind of at the mercy, to a certain extent, of the actors?
Well, you're at their mercy, but they're also your greatest gift, because they can lift your words and story to heights you couldn't imagine. And they can, I mean, that's what I love about collaborative art.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You really, okay, I got it this good, and if you have like a great director and great actors and great designers, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was so smart.
So you like the idea of being able to change it with feedback from the actors,
Very
from the
much,
directors. So
very
you're not
much.
one of those playwrights that says, this is the way it's going to be, or else.
No. I mean, as a playwright, you have much more control than, say, a screenwriter, in which case you have none. They can rewrite anything. But if I'm working with really good artists and something's not clicking for them, that's a cue to me to really, really study it and find out what they need.
Oh, that's a really good. So do you talk to the actors quite a bit?
It's different. Some directors prefer you not talk to the actors too much, but generally it's pretty open eventually.
Well, I got to interview A.R. Gurney once, and he told me this great story about Love Letters opening. And Elaine Stritch was playing the woman, and she has died, and she's supposedly in heaven and talking and everything. And he said on one night he kept hearing this swishing noise from her, and he didn't know what the swishing was. And he finally said after the play, Elaine, what was that? She said, I was brushing my teeth. He said, you don't brush your teeth in heaven? And she said, I do. So anyway, that character had taken it. I mean, that actress had really put a new spin on that. And, Gurney said, here he was out in the audience. There was nothing he could do. There was nothing he could do. When you're waiting for opening night, and then the opening night comes, then there are the reviews. Do you read the reviews? Do you pay attention to the reviews?
Well, if it's in New York, you're just waiting for the New York Times, because that's the one that's going to tell if your show is going to run or not going to run. If you're in a commercial run.
Right.
Now, if you're in like more of an off-Broadway run at Manhattan Theater Club, you're going to run for your 6 weeks, no matter what. But boy, you don't want it to be bad, because what happens is suddenly everyone leaves the party and you're sitting there drinking with a few friends. And
well, sure. And a lot of times when you get right down to it, this is just one person, maybe one person at the New York Times that sees a play and has that kind of power. And that's scary.
It's tough for that playwright.
Yeah, I would say that it would. And in a way it isn't for novelists, because at least the book is out there at that particular point. You were talking about film a moment ago, and of course you wrote the screenplay to Crimes of the Heart, and there had to be a lot of challenges to doing that, because the play takes place all in the kitchen. I love that kitchen. A lot goes on in that kitchen. I mean, that's a busy kitchen, and not much cooking either. I mean, it's a busy.
Looks like my kitchen.
Busy kitchen. What sort of challenges did you confront when you thought, I'm going to adapt this for the screen?
Well, luckily I was working with a director, Bruce Beresford, who had done several plays into films, and his philosophy was, well, if it worked as a play, don't muck with it too much. So he was very respectful, and we didn't change too much.
The dialogues, the only thing I can remember, there were some exterior scenes, like the bus scene when we're saying farewell to one of the characters. I don't want to give too much away, because there may be 1 or 2 people out there who've not seen this movie yet or been to the play. But those scenes, some of the exterior scenes, Meg running and getting up in the tree, those kinds of things. We just have a few exterior shots, but I think they enhance it. So you weren't disappointed at all, were you, in the film?
No.
I just loved it. I think it's one of the best films I have ever seen. And the acting was extraordinary.
I know, I was really incredibly as I said, if you have actors like that, they make everything just beautiful and funny and easy and
you know, I think of all those characters, the one that would have been trickiest to play might have been Babe, because you wouldn't want it to be over the top. I mean, she's the one with the saxophone. She's the one who offers lemonade to her dying husband, or that she thinks could be dying, you know. So you know, but if she hadn't done, if Sissy hadn't played that just right, it could have come off as a caricature. But as the way she does it, I mean, it just seems like a perfectly natural thing to have going on.
I know. I felt such affinity with Sissy Spacek even before, you know, we worked together on that project, because I just love her work. It's so magical and strange and real.
Did you and Sissy have talks about Babe?
A few.
What advice, if you were giving her advice, and if you can recall what it was, what did you say to her about Babe? What was the key to Babe?
I can't remember if I know we talked, I can't remember what we said, but I know something I tell most actresses that are playing it: don't be sentimental and don't have self-pity.
That's really good advice. It's actually good advice for life and for writing and everything else. Isn't it funny when you're talking about the art, sometimes you get good life advice in the process. You got an Oscar nomination. I mean, you get a Pulitzer and then you get an Oscar nomination. Sissy's up for an Oscar, too. What was it like being at the Academy Awards?
This is so pathetic, but I wasn't at the Academy
Awards. You didn't get to go?
I was working on a play in New York that was in rehearsals really close to opening, and
Were you torn?
I was torn, but also I'm sort of a workaholic, and when I was really focused on the new play, and that was where my concern was, and I just was young enough to think these chances came around all the time.
You know, I wanted to ask you about that, because you were real young to get so much success. I mean, for writers to get that kind of success. We were talking about Tracy Letts earlier, and he was in his 40s before he finally got recognition. But you're 28 years old, you've gotten a Pulitzer, you've got an Oscar nomination, and we all think, isn't that exciting? But is there a special challenge that comes with it? Are there special pressures that come with having success at such an early age?
Yes. The older I get, kind of the more I see the many mistakes I made.
Don't we all? I mean, you know, you and I could talk over a glass of wine for a long time about mistakes that we wish we hadn't made. But just the pressures, pressures to produce. The reason I say that, I wrote a novel when I was very young and it got published. It was sort of a fluke thing. But that was a tremendous pressure on me then to follow up. And it was almost like I couldn't ever live up to the expectation. It was very frustrating for me. And I just wondered if you ever went through anything like that.
Well, I mean, I still go through it, because people always say, oh, that was your best play, and it was your first play, so you feel kind of like...
No, your best play hasn't been written yet.
I hope not.
No, it hasn't. In fact, there was recently a revival of Crimes of the Heart off Broadway. Kathleen Turner directed. How was she like as a director?
I really enjoyed her. She's very smart and intuitive. And she just does the work, and goes. I mean, she's kind of a workhorse type, which maybe you wouldn't expect of a director.
Really, because I'm so used to seeing her in films like War of the Roses, which is one of my favorites. Isn't she great in that?
So
I mean, just great in that. But so she's a workhorse. She's very serious. What did she bring that was new to the play? Any new insights from it?
I think she brought more ambiguity. Mm-hmm. Even there was more darkness and more lightness.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? It'd been 30 years, I guess, since you'd written the play. As you look at it as an older, more seasoned playwright, do you feel differently about it at all?
Well, I realize, because now it is in fact a period piece.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And of course, when I wrote it, you know, it was just sort of now, or 5 years after Hurricane Camille, it was, which is 1974. But now I look at it, wow, that lady that wrote that play was so enraged.
Really?
Was so furious. And at the time I thought I was just sweet. But I mean, I see all of the anger and all of the rage of the 1970s and women changing, and each of these women trying to have a voice. and feeling squashed by
Yes.
the conventions.
Particularly Meg, I think.
Literally a voice.
Yes. Oh, that's very interesting, but you do it with such grace, I think. Do you see the themes that started with Crimes of the Heart carrying over into your other work? I'm looking at one of your anthologies, like The Wake of Jamie Foster, The Miss Firecracker Contest, Lucky Spot. Do you see that some of the same things carrying over?
I think I write a lot about loneliness and yearning and
Family.
family.
Family's complicated, isn't it?
Correct.
It is just hard stuff, and there's so many stories in families. But one of the things I see, or maybe it's not a theme so much as a style, is that laughter through tears. And we're showing a clip from the film about where the sisters are laughing about, oh, Granddaddy died. I laugh. I just find that hysterical. And it doesn't mean that they're not sad, but this is cathartic, and we see that same kind of cathartic response in, The Ridiculous Fraud and some of your other work. Is that sort of trademark with your writing?
Well, I don't know if it's my writing. I think it's more my worldview. I can't, I just see the opposites.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I see, oh, that's terribly sad, but oh, that's so beautiful, and I don't know. I can't, like, everything has an edge or an opposite, and I just can't help but see that. And sometimes people kind of are annoyed with me.
I just wonder. I don't know whether anybody ever be annoyed with me, but I just wonder if laughter is a coping mechanism for you.
Laughter is a huge coping mechanism, and I think irony is. It's survival, and I think it's a very Southern thing.
Yes, and you can find that same laughter through tears in a lot of Southern literature. And speaking of that, so many of your early plays are set in the South, and in Ridiculous Fraud you came back to the South, but you've written plays set in other places. Abundance takes place in Wyoming. When you set a place in another locale, does the tone of it change a little bit?
Absolutely, I think. Yeah, because the South has a particular ambiance, at least to me, because I grew up there, and that's you're rooted there. And the others, I mean, one play I wrote takes place in Los Angeles, like in the year 2052.
All right.
So I mean, it's
so
definitely going to have a different tone.
Different tone.
And it's really fun to write different stuff.
Carson McCullers, and she was one of my favorites. Wasn't she a wonderful writer? Remember the Wedding, one of my favorite books. But she said that, she lived outside of the South most of her adult life. But she said that somehow she thought that her best work usually ended up being when it was pulled in the South, in the Southern traditions. Do you think that's probably true for you or not?
I'm afraid it might be true. Although I think Abundance is one of my better plays. And Control Freaks, which takes place in Los Angeles.
Yeah, which is pretty far removed, about as far removed from Southern graciousness and culture as you could find. Why do you think so many great writers come from the South? I mean, from your home state of Mississippi, my goodness, I mean.
I know.
Eudora Welty, Faulkner, Richard Wright. Why is that?
Well, Richard Ford, who also comes from Mississippi, he said he thinks so many writers come from Mississippi because it's such a complicated place, and that you have to.
What's so complicated about it?
Well, I mean, I think it's just there's such a darkness to it because of the history.
Yeah, yes, absolutely,
and also kind of a kindness and warmth to it. And it's very paradoxical to grow up there.
Oh, I mean, all these extremes coming together. One of the things that I found about you on YouTube that I just love is this wonderful interview you conducted with Eudora Welty. I mean, a great writer. I mean, she's great, about her story, A Worn Path. How did that come about?
Well, I'm not clear exactly how, but they asked me if I would do the interview. It was a great privilege. And they really had given me the questions, but it was one of the greatest days of my life to be in her house and to speak with her, and so incredibly kind and and keen. She was in her 90s, and she wasn't even writing anymore because by then she had really, really bad arthritis. But she was talking about coming back from the recovery center, and she was telling stories about it. One about how a little boy was thrown out of a car, and she remembers the day that he found his voice, and the way she described it, it was like just a beautiful piece of poetry. This was her talking.
It's incredible.
And I realized, she's an artist no matter if she can write or not. Because it's the way she looks at things. She doesn't have to put it down. It's just her being alive and looking at the world.
Had you known her before?
I had met her, and we used to drive by her house and look at her house with my mother in the car. She'd go,
because she was an icon in Mississippi.
She's like a writer. She's a woman writer, and she's international.
Yeah, she's not just Mississippi.
She's not just Mississippi.
It's like the great line from Crimes of the Heart when there's the suicide. They keep thinking this wasn't just local. I mean, this was national. I mean, if we're going to have a tragedy, let's say that we want to have it on a big scope. If we're going to have to go through it. If you could go back and ask Eudora Welty a question now, all these years later, you have some. Yeah, because there are a lot of things I would like to ask.
So many. What would you ask her?
Well, I'd like to know more about her romances because this new biography has come out. Suzanne Mars, a friend of hers, has written that she really had a much fuller life than we were led to believe. But, of course, that's part of the Southern don't tell everything kind of deal. And that she was a very funny person and very vibrant. She wasn't just holed away in her house writing stories, that she lived a very full life.
Well, I mean, I think if you grew up in Jackson, you would know that. I mean, more.
Yes, because so the word had gotten out already.
Willie Morris loved her, and she had her plays done there, so she was in kind of the theater crowd.
So
my little sister's in a play of hers, The Ponder Heart.
Oh, I love that.
I love that.
That's a wonderful, wonderful play and wonderful, wonderful story. You were talking about, she was an inspiration to you. What about women playwrights? Were there any women playwrights that you looked up to?
Well, Lillian Helm was about the only woman playwright I knew of.
Well, yeah, and again, another Southerner. Because what's interesting, I was looking at this statistic. When you got the Pulitzer in playwriting, that was like the first time in like 21 years a woman had gotten the Pulitzer Prize. And I just wondered if women playwrights were regarded a little differently than male playwrights. Did you ever feel that in your early days in theater?
Well, I mean, clearly women were regarded differently.
Yes, well, yeah, we know that.
In playwriting, in fiction, in who's on the Supreme Court, so who's president.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
I just wondered if you ran into that prejudice, like, for example, when your play becomes a big hit, and, it stars women. I mean, it's a woman's play that men can enjoy, but, I mean, great vehicles for actresses and everything. If that gender bias was still in place, in spite of the fact that it was such a brilliant play.
I don't know. I think I was very lucky because it was received, kindly. But I have had so many women come to me and say, thank you for writing roles for women that are really, especially younger women.
There's even a book out that monologues for women from your plays, and I bet that had to make you feel good because there's such great, great speeches. Tell us what you're working on now. You've got several projects, I know.
Well, I finished a play called The Jacksonian that's been done in workshop, and I'm trying to get a full production of that. And it takes place in Jackson, Mississippi in 1964 at the Jacksonian Motel.
That was a big deal in Jackson?
Well, no. I mean, but this is like a kind of a fictional motel that's on a highway that's really kind of sleazy.
Oh, that's even more fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you say you workshop a play, how does that process kind of go? Who do you have do the workshopping? Do you go to universities? Do you have community groups do it?
Well, I work with a theater company, New York Stage and Film, and they have a program where they get actors and the director, and they give you the space. It's out at Vassar in the summer, and you just get, a few days to work on the play and then see a reading of it.
Does it ever happen, because this has happened to me with a novel, does it ever happen, Beth, that you do a workshopping and you think, I don't think this is ever going to work. Have you ever had something that fell through the cracks? I had a book I had to abandon after I spent a year on it because I thought, this thing was just flawed from the beginning and I'm going to have to let it go. As a playwright, do you ever have to do that? Or in this workshopping process, and novelists don't get to do stuff like that so much.
Yeah.
Do you have a better opportunity to correct those kinds of flaws?
Well, I've never given up on a play. I mean, I've only had really one play that hasn't been produced at all, but it's been workshopped. I don't know. It's sort of, plays are kind of short. They're not like novels.
Yeah.
They're not like such a huge undertaking. I feel like kind of the characters need a second act.
That's such a great, see all these great lines that just come out of you. You have wonderful dialogue. We just have a minute left here. Do you have a favorite line you've written? Can you point to one favorite line?
Gosh.
That's a hard question to throw at you.
I don't know.
I love the line from Crimes of the Heart when the question, do your tongues have wings? I mean, you've got to have felt good when you wrote that. That was a killer line, Beth.
I thought it was too corny, and then I thought, but Lenny would say it.
But there you go. Thank you so much for being with us here today. You're just terrific. Congratulations on all the wonderful things that you've done and are doing. And thank all of you for joining us on Writing Out Loud.